Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is the OnePlus 9 Pro, and OnePlus challenged me to show the true colors of Philly by using this phone with the Hasselblad integrations with their cameras. So there's a lot of true colors in Philly. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of gritty places to go. Not that gritty, but like gritty places to go. So here's where we went and photographed. We started our day off at Independence Mall. In Independence Mall, you've got the Liberty Bell, as well as Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed. Those gave us great opportunities to use the ultra-wide angle, to shoot with their HDR modes, to try out all the different lenses that this camera has to offer. From there, we continued the history tour of Philadelphia by going to the Art Museum, aka the Philadelphia Museum of Art, or where Rocky ran up the stairs. I am a master runner. I like going there to shoot ultra-wide photos. When I'm testing all different types of lenses, I like to go there to photograph because you've got the stairs that go straight across and you need an ultra-wide to do it. But also, you got Rocky, because everybody loves or is that Price is Right? No. Anyway, so that's where Rocky ran up the stairs. I got to run up there multiple times because someone may not have hit record on the camera the first time or accidentally hit stop and then start, whatever. I got some extra exercise by running up. Whew. But there's also a hidden gem in Philly called Shofuso Gardens, which is in Fairmount Park. We took a ride over there because there were still some cherry blossoms in effect, and I wanted to see the colors, the tones, the clarity, and also try out the HDR mode versus not HDR mode. And then the second day that we filmed, because we went over multiple days here, we got our model Nina out into a gritty playground in Kenzo, and we did a full-on portrait shoot, trying portrait mode, shooting raw, trying the pro mode, running the camera through its paces, before bringing it back to the studio, editing the photos the way that I would personally edit them, and then making actual physical prints, which at the end of this video, we're going upstairs to my studio, which is like right upstairs, you know, to my office and to my desk, where we're gonna take a deeper, closer look at the images as well as the prints, and I'm gonna give you my final thoughts on the images and this phone. Before I get into breaking down each shoot and diving into the images and getting more thorough on that stuff, let's talk about the actual phone. This is it. This is the OnePlus 9 Pro. It's a pretty big phone, but it fits really well in my hands, and I actually like the feel of it for a bigger phone because it has a 6.7-inch diagonal screen with only a hole punch here. Here, let me open it. With a hole punch up here in the top. There's no notch, just a hole punch for the front-facing camera. And I will say that this screen is fast, it's responsive, it's colorful. I like the tones, I like the color, I like the clarity. It is a solid screen. One of my favorite things about this phone, though, is the fact that right here, oh, there's a thumbprint reader underneath the screen. And I don't even have to look. I can be like, oh, and I just unlocked it. No more do I need to take a mask off in public, swipe up 17 times before I type in my passcode, because there's an under-the-screen fingerprint reader, and it just opens it up and makes it so much more enjoyable to use than having to swipe up 17 times until I have to type in my passcode. Another thing I like that OnePlus did here is that it's USB-C, it comes with a super powerful charger, and in like 15 minutes, you can charge this thing all the way up. The fact is, like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, I'm at 50%, let me plug it in. I come back 10 minutes later, and boom, it's fully charged and ready to go. But that's the extent of the phone features that I'm going to talk about, because this is all about the cameras. That's what my challenge was. Show the true colors of Philly, test out the different cameras on here, and see how the results are, and then tell you what I think about it. So you have two main cameras right here. Both sensors are made by Sony. One is 48 megapixels. You also have on the back a 50 megapixel ultra wide camera. That thing's gonna help you when you're out at the Philadelphia Museum of Art and wanna get the stairs all the way from the left, all the way to the right, and get everything into it. So they did a great job focusing on the ultra wide camera as well, but how were the results? We will get there in just a few moments. And there is an 8 megapixel 3.3x zoom lens. That one is an interesting one, I will say. It wouldn't be my first choice of lens to use. They spent a lot of time on the ultra wide and the standard, but you do have the 3.3x when you do need it. And the funny thing is, one of the best photos that I got during the photo shoot using this is from this 3.3x lens. But now let's get on to the photo shoots, starting with Independence Mall, where you have the Liberty Bell Pavilion, as well as Independence Hall. Now, if you've never been to Philly and you plan on visiting Philly, let me give you some words of advice. You want to photograph the Liberty Bell, make sure you get here at 9 a.m. It opens at 9 a.m. If not, check this out. Oh my God, I need to go wide angle with this. Here we go. There we are, ultra wide. I gotta go ultra wide just to get the line. It's like a 90-minute wait. Get here early. There's no tickets to get into the Liberty Bell. You just show up and you stand in line, and because they're doing extra checks and they're being extra careful, it does take longer for people to get through because they let less people in at a time, which is pretty cool. If you get there early enough, you kind of have the Liberty Bell to yourself. But we were lucky enough to get in early, and of course my goal is to use as many of the lenses as possible from this camera to test out that integration with Hasselblad, to see how the colors are, to see how the tones are, to see how everything is. So let me set it up for you real quick. I did do a screen recording while I was taking photos. The reason I do that is so that you can see exactly what I'm shooting from my angle and what the phone is seeing when I'm shooting. Now, there is a Pro mode. Pro mode allows you to fully control the cameras and make all the tweaks and the changes you want to shutter speed, ISO, aperture, and also you can shoot in RAW. But the truth of the matter is, when I take a phone out to shoot, sometimes I don't care if it's RAW or if it's JPEGs. I'm just saying, sometimes, because I just want to go out and shoot. I just want to take pictures. And that's what I went out and did. But I did run through some of the RAW files and I did run through JPEGs just so that I could see what both of them do. But a lot of people that are picking up a camera like this or a phone like this, they just want to go and take pictures. They want to rely on the cameras and the technology and the integration with Hasselblad to give them the final results without having to do too much to get those results. I, on the other hand, I kind of want to tweak just a little bit, and I have a little better understanding of the photography aspect of it, so I did run it through its paces. But look at this image right here. This one is done in the portrait mode. Really good composition. Very happy with the results that I got because it was strong backlighting there. We were not allowed around the back of the Liberty Bell, which is where the light comes in. So instead, I had to shoot towards the open window. It's not open, but it's letting in a lot of light, which means that I have to rely on the HDR to give me a better image. Brighter on this side to compensate for the shadow, and then hopefully still give me some details in the background, and the portrait mode needs to kick in. And I think that the portrait mode actually did a fantastic job here. The colors in the background look great, the blown out bokeh looked perfectly fine to me, and the composition, because that I took it, it was in my hands, looks really solid on this image. But I also wanted to try the ultra wide. So getting down on a lower angle, they wouldn't let me on the other side. I did get down low though, because that's the point. You want to try and get your lines as straight as possible. And I will say with the ultra wide here, whatever work they're doing in it, the lines are fairly straight, and I'm happy with those results. It looks great, nice and sharp, nice tones, nice contrast. One thing I do want to warn people on is when you zoom in on your phone at any point, when you do that, you are enlarging the pixels to such extremes that you're going to start to see imperfections. I see that with the Pro 50 megapixel cameras that I see, that if I'm on the back of the camera and I zoom in, I'm like, that looks like an imperfection. But what I actually did is blow it up so large that it would have to be the size of a wall, and I'd have to be standing this close to it to see those imperfections. So the more megapixels you have and the more you start to zoom in, you start to see those imperfections in any type of system and any camera that you have. But with all that said, I'm pretty happy with the results that I got from this phone shooting the Liberty Bell, but then I wanted to go outside. So we went outside to get Independence Hall. The tip here is if you're coming to Philly again, there are actually tickets for tours of Independence Hall. You've got to get that at the visitor center. Get that first, then you can pick a time and they will, you go back and you go through Independence Hall. It's pretty cool. But this is the perfect thing to test out the ultra wide lens with. One of the things that I noticed when I started to take the ultra wide shots that I didn't realize was happening is that the standard mode, for the camera is going to be 12 megapixels with the standard lens and then 12.5 megapixels with the ultra wide. And you might be saying, why am I not getting that 48 megapixels and that 50 megapixels? And the reason being, in my opinion, is that the majority of people out there shooting photos, they don't need the fullest resolution, largest file possible. They're just out there taking pictures, posting them on social media, and sharing them with the world. But I noticed that this was happening. So I was like, is there a difference between the 12 megapixels, the 12.5, the 48, and the 50? And to be honest with you, when I printed out a bunch of prints 17 by 22, I couldn't tell you which ones were done at the 12 megapixel or 12.5 megapixels versus the ones that were done at 48 or 50. And that's at 17 by 22. And the majority of the people just want to save space on their phone. If they were to use the highest quality every single time, they're going to chew up a lot more space. And the everyday person just wants a ton of space so they can store a ton of photos, and they're not looking at it from my lens. But I'm looking at it from my lens, which is, what is the best quality possible image that I can get, and how are the results with all of the features that this camera offers. Now, if you do want to take advantage of the 48 and 50 megapixels and get the highest res file possible, how do you do that? Well, it's actually pretty simple. Under photo mode, you've got the 3 dots at the top right-hand side. You click on it, you can see that the first one is selected, it has a line through it, and that's giving you the regular mode. If you want it to be in full res, high res, boom, you hit the other one, and now you're shooting at the fullest res possible. So back to this image of Independence Hall, I like it. I mean, I zoom in, and does it look a little crunchy to me? Yeah, this one looks like it's slightly over sharpened, but when I printed it out, I pulled back on the clarity and texture just a little bit, and it looks perfectly fine at 17 by 22. So I was thinking, why would OnePlus do this? Why would they give it a little bit more sharpening and crank it up just a little bit? And I think in their testing, where they show people and ask them what they like, I think the everyday people are drawn to more sharper images. So that's why they do that. This is one area which I wish they would just turn it down just a slight knob, just a little bit on the sharpening. But like I said, when you zoom in all the way on your phone, you can see it, but when you print it out, it looks perfectly fine. So after finishing up at Independence Hall, because all I really wanted was that wide angle shot, we took a ride over to the art museum, parked the car, yes, I'm being literal, paid for parking, walked over to the art museum stairs, sat my tuchus down on the ground so that I could get this ultra wide shot. Like I said earlier, I like to go to the art museum and test out the ultra wide angle lenses that I get in the mail, and that's why I chose to go there. Plus, it's a great true colors of Philly moment, because this is one of the most seen tourist attractions ever in Philly because of, you know, Rocky running up the stairs. But this looks fine to me. I really like the colors. I like the tones. Look at the sky. The sky looks great. The shadow areas look perfectly fine to me. At the edges, you can see that you have a slight bowing in, but that's the same thing that happens with just about every lens that I test, even on quote unquote real cameras, aka full frame cameras with full frame lenses. But the fact that I could sit in the same spot that I always sit in and get the stairs left to right, both of those poles in there, and go all the way in with the flag poles all the way to the back, I was really happy with those results. And I was even more happy when I was able to print this out and go, yep, that looks good. But the next shot of the stairs, this is where I went into the high quality mode. I wanted to shoot it with the full 50 megapixels, because the one before was done at the 12.5 megapixels. And you'll see later when we go into the computer upstairs in my studio, you're gonna see the difference between the 12.5 and the 50, but you won't see the difference when you print it out. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to just tell you, is that you won't be able to tell the difference between the 12.5 megapixels printed and the 50 megapixels printed at 17 by 22. And that was the biggest realization for me, is that either way that you went with the JPEGs, they both looked fantastic. They had the same color, they had the same clarity, they had the same tones, and they had the same results when they were printed. Next up, it was time to run up the stairs because that's what Rocky did. And I'm in shape and I can run upstairs, and I probably look good doing it in my jeans and my boots. But at the top of the stairs, all the way near where the art museum is, you've got this work of art, this statue outside that's a bronze statue. I like to go here, get a low angle, and shoot ultra wide. Look down at the stairs. Look how straight across they are. That looks good. I'm not seeing a ton of imperfections in this image. It looks clean, it looks sharp, the sky looks great, and I'm happy with the results from the ultra wide right here. Next, I just turned around. I pulled a 180, not a 360, because a 360 would mean you spin all the way around and you're back where you started. But it was only a 180, so I turned around to get this photo right here. Ultra wide. Look down here at the bottom in the middle, and then look to the left and look to the right of that. I have the perfect composition here. It's like perfectly matched. The same beige is showing there on the left as it is showing on the right. But this isn't an image that you see all the time, because at the time we were there, we're basically shooting with the sun. It was like 12 o'clock, probably around 12 o'clock. It's basically straight up, and I'm shooting back towards the city, and this, the HDR mode, did a great job of giving me the scene as it was. So I'm happy with the results here. I did tweak it after the fact in the computer because I always tweak my files. Yes, the camera does a good job, but I want to take the files to the next step and do it to my taste before I put it out into the world. Next up, it was time to go say hi to Rocky, so I ran back down the stairs, and they have a section where they moved the statue to. It used to be up top, which I don't know why they moved it. It should be up top, but anyway, they moved it over to here, and there was nobody there, so I could get this ultra-wide shot. You see the trees at the top right, the trees at the top left, you've got the art museum in the back, you've got the little work vehicle to the right, so basically everything's in focus front to back. The colors look good again, the tones look good, and you wouldn't be able to look at this and be like, you shot this with a phone. I think most people looking at it would be like, yeah, cool, nice shot. Now, there's a plaque on the statue, and you're supposed to be able to get pretty close with this camera to get kind of like a macro effect. So here you could see the A, nice and sharp, and then the O of Rocky Balboa is already out of focus. So that looks pretty good using the ultra wide lens once again to get the results. So that wraps up the true colors of the Philadelphia Museum of Art and Rocky Balboa. Now it was time to hop back in the car, go over to Shofuso Gardens, which is hidden in Fairmount Park, which, if you know that Will Smith song, which we can't play in this video, Summertime, that was Summer, Summer, Summertime. I could sing a little bit. It's all right, I can do it. That's where that was filmed. You know, the plateau is where everybody goes. Basically, it's right there by the Belmont Plateau. So here we are at the Shofuso Gardens. The first image, I wanted to see what I could do with the standard lens. How could the background bokeh look? So I got close to this object on the left-hand side, which looks sharp, which looks colorful, and you can see that the cherry blossom in the background is blown out of focus. It looks really good. One of the coolest features at Shofuso Garden is they have a koi pond. Now, we weren't allowed to feed them this day because there was some Canadian geese invading, and if you try to, feed the koi, the geese would try to peck at the koi, and they didn't want that. But so I still went over to where the koi are, and I'm like, sorry guys, I can't feed you. They're like, feed me, Seymour. And I was like, sorry, I don't have any fish food for you. But got up and close, got up and personal, took the shot, and there's the picture of the koi. Next up, we have a cherry blossom. At least I think it's a cherry blossom, or just some really cool looking flowers that were pink. Wanted to see how close we could get to it. This is what that shot looks like. It's the ultra wide lens again. The colors look good, the tones look good. Look at the blue of the sky. That looks good. The people out of focus in the background, they look good as well. So that was a happy little shot right there. Not to say Bob Ross or anything like that, but it was a happy little shot. This is where I want to talk about the HDR versus not HDR. HDR, I believe, is on by default, and I like to go in there and turn it off. So I turn it off for this particular reason in this situation. This is done with the ultra wide, correct, Jared? Yes, this is done with the ultra wide, and I love that the shaded areas show up darker. That's what it looks like to my eyes. That just looks more real to me. But when we go to the next image, that's what HDR looks like. It pumps up the shadows in the foreground underneath the tree, and it then brightens up the background, and it does what it does because it stacks a bunch of images. But also keep in mind, when you shoot HDR, it takes the phone a little bit more time to process it, and being the fact that I was recording my screen at the same time, I'm using more horsepower. It didn't really slow me down, but it's just something to know that for what we were doing, I'm recording my screen while taking the pictures and the HDR. So if it looks a little slower on my end, it's just because I'm recording the screen at the same time. But I think that a lot of people love the HDR look. The HDR look is not my thing. It's never been my thing. This, to me, I think they need to dial it down just a little bit. You can bring it back in the computer if you would like, but here's the difference. That's without HDR. That's with HDR. The majority of the public will gravitate towards HDR because it's vibrant and colorful, and they're like, wow, that's amazing. The photographers in the world, like myself and Steven, will look at this image and go, yeah, that's what I like. So you have those options, HDR on, HDR off. I personally prefer the HDR off in this situation. So after showing you the true colors of Philly by giving you a quick tour around the city, going to different historical spots, and capturing images with this OnePlus 9 Pro, well, most people want to take pictures of either themselves or of models. So we went to a gritty playground in the Kensington area of Philadelphia, where we brought out our model Nina to be the subject that we're photographing. Now this playground has a lot of different colors. Hopefully it's not lead paint, because Dan's kid plays there and I don't want to see him eat the lead paint, but hey, you never know. It's probably pretty clean these days, but it's nice and colorful, and that was a great area to test out the wide angle, the standard, and the telephoto 3.3x lens. And let's dive into the first image. Now, if you're wondering, Jared, what is this filter you used on this lens? Well, that's called Fro. Yeah, I must have gotten the camera super close to my face while shooting this one, and my hair kind of went around the outside of the lens, the outside of the phone, giving me this result, because it's ultra wide. So you want to be careful that anything, like if you have your hand there or a finger there, you might end up getting your finger in the ultra wide. But I will tell you, my finger ended up in this ultra wide a heck of a lot less than that other phone that I tested with an ultra wide a couple years ago, where my finger was always showing up. This one, it did not. All right, so now we've got the one without my hair in it, and this is hot in the streets right now. Everybody with big feet, elongated feet, that's what happens when you shoot ultra wide and you get things near the ends. The feet, everything elongates. Some people think that's awesome for shooting the hipsters out in the streets. That's what they like doing. It looks fine here, but it's not as realistic. So when you shoot with ultra wide and you shoot verticals and you put people near the ends of the frame, you're gonna start to see things being elongated. But I'm happy with how this image looks. She looks good, the colors look good, the tone looks good. We're actually shooting in a shaded area with the sun in the background, and it looks perfectly fine to me. Now, I wanted to try out the portrait mode. Steven was getting B-roll of me shooting. That's why he's in the right-hand side, but he's blown out. Naturally, and by naturally, I mean not naturally, because it's portrait mode, but he is blown out there and he's not as much of a distraction. I was actually really pleased with the results that I got from this portrait mode. Sometimes you wonder, how are the edges going to be? Are they going to be clean? And as we go around this frame, it got it here between the legs. It was able to blow out the background still. And then if we go up near her head, you can see a little bit of imperfections as you zoom in. Remember, the more you zoom in, pinch to zoom here, the more you're going to enlarge it and see those imperfections. Versus if you printed it out and you did it big, you wouldn't be able to see those imperfections. Next shot, tried it again. Look at the colors. Colors are nice and vibrant, nice and saturated, nice and punchy. This is with the standard one with the portrait mode, and I noticed that between her elbow and her forearm here, it did not get the blurriness in that particular area, but the rest of the frame, it did a great job on. Sometimes when you have those really small areas, it has trouble doing it. This is what it looks like, but I'm still really happy with how this image looks. The colors and the tones, nobody looking at this would be like, this wasn't done with a quote unquote real camera, unless they pixel peeped or got super close and tried to over analyze it. At this particular playground, there was a red, vibrant gritty looking wall that we went and we photographed Nina in front of. Right here, we've got the standard lens. So I'm standing back using the standard to get the full body. My lines are pretty good at the bottom. You can see that they're straight. This print looks really good. I mean, as we zoom in on the face, you might be like, well, it doesn't look as this or that compared to a DSLR or mirrorless camera. But remember, how far am I zooming in on this? Look how I am pinching and zooming. Versus when we go and look at this in the computer and go look at the print upstairs, you're like, damn, nice colors, nice tones, nice clarity. Everything looks good about it. Now, the next shot, still in front of the red wall, this is my favorite shot from the entire thing. And when I tweaked it, I threw a preset called November Rain on it from ProPack 3, and it just in one click made it look like this. And this is good. And this is done with that 3.3x lens. That's with the zoom lens. And that one, that's that 8 megapixels. It's not the 48. It's not the 50. It's the one that concerned me a little more because if I had a deep background, everything looks sharp. Because it's a smaller lens, it's a smaller sensor. That's what it looks like. It looks like a cell phone photo. But for whatever reason, right here in this situation, it does not look like a cell phone photo. When we zoom in on the face, you can see it doesn't look as detailed as if I used a full frame sensor, but look how far I am zoomed in on the 8 megapixel image. When you look at this print, and when I showed it to Steven from 2 feet away, he didn't sit there and go, wow, that looks like it was done with a phone. You just can't tell. Those who know, like me, and you get super duper 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 close to it and you get around the lips, you're like, all right, I could see that that wasn't done with a mirrorless camera. The everyday people, even if they got this close, they'd be like, this is an awesome shot. I love this photo. This is my favorite from the bunch. Next, portrait mode in front of the wall. You can see now the bricks go out of focus versus the one right before it, where the bricks are basically fully in focus because we're using the 3.3x zoom lens. This one right here, nice and smooth. She's nice and sharp. She looks great. The tones look great. The colors look great. What I think makes the one that I really like feel so much better is I think it's the perfect composition and it just felt right. We got one more I want to show you from the same red wall, and that's just this with the foot popped. I love the colors. I love the tones. Look at the shadows. Look at the reds. It looks good. Next, we move to the front of the red building where there was a place to sit. The wall was definitely gritty with some graffiti. It was also in open shade. I'm a big fan of shooting in open shade. What I mean by that is she's in the shade, out in the open, and you still have some nice light coming in. Sat her down here. This one right here was done with the standard lens without portrait mode on. And yes, I know I'm trying to show the true colors of Philly. I'm a black and white guy sometimes, so I like to throw black and white images in there just to see how the tones look, and the tones look really good here. I think she looks fantastic. I think this is a really good shot. If it was done with the ultra wide, it would have like squished it even more, and that's one of the things. The ultra wide can work in situations where you're shooting portraits, but most of the time, it's not gonna give you the best, more realistic results when it comes to just looking for what the model actually looked like. But here, we threw it on with the portrait mode, and this time it's like cranked up to 11 on portrait mode, but I think the separation looks great. The foot positioning looks fantastic. The colors are nice and soft and smooth. Everything about this shot, I'm really happy with that one as well. This top-down shot, I moved closer to Nina. She looked really good in this spot. The light was just nice and soft. Top down, just snap off this shot, zoom in on it. The eyes, look, that's me. That's me. It's me, gritty. I'm in there. That's me right in her eyes. And look at the colors. I threw November Rain on this one as well with the vignette because I just love how it feels. This shot is fantastic. This is like when you shoot weddings and you put on like an 85mm lens or a 50mm lens, you kind of get up above and you tilt down. And that's what I wanted to try with the phone. And I'm happy with those results. And for the final shot, we moved out into the playground where it was more harsh lighting. We had some split lighting where she had shadow on one side of the face, she had the sun coming in on the other side of the face, and this one was done again with the standard lens. And look at that. Look at the split light. Look at the black and white. The tones look fantastic coming off of this camera. And then when I tweak them in the computer, this is the result. The results are fantastic. Now keep in mind, I say on the computer because I wanted to make prints, so I tweak them there. But most of you guys are gonna be tweaking right on the phone itself, and you do have the ability to do that. You can throw the presets on there if you have presets. You can do the tweaking if you shoot RAW and DNG. You can tweak the JPEGs and still get really, really good results. But what I want to do right now is go up to my desk, go into the computer, talk about the images a little bit more there, show you some prints, and then give you my final thoughts. So we all know that pictures are going to look great on a phone. Whether you're posting them on social media or you're just flipping through and looking at them on a smaller screen, they're gonna look great. But how do they look when you put it onto a computer, and how do they look when you print them off and you print them large? Let's turn to the computer right now because we've got the ultra-wide shot of the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Now this one was done at the 12.5 megapixels, which is the standard when you are shooting. It automatically goes into that, and this, you can see as I zoom in, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't zoom in that far. I have a 31.5-inch display here. So the more you zoom in, the more you're blowing it up to look like a poster or the size of a wall. It looks perfectly fine to me here, but I want to show you the next shot because this one was done with the full 50 megapixels. And yes, you can go in much further. And yes, it does look crunchy in terms of the processing and the sharpening. Is it overdone? Well, when I'm zooming in 1:1 on 50 megapixels, it looks like it's slightly over sharpened. Like I said downstairs, I would like to see them pull back on the sharpening just a little bit. But when you print it out, you don't notice any of that over sharpening look. It's just when you zoom in. The colors, the tones, the clarity. Of course, the clarity from front to back in terms of focus is going to be there. You're using a much smaller sensor than if you were using a full frame, quote unquote, real camera, as I like to say. But I'm really happy with the colors and the results that I was able to pull off of these sensors in these cameras. And as I've mentioned a bunch of times so far, this is my favorite shot, and it was done with that 3.3x zoom. Can we go in very far when we zoom in? No, not really, because there's not a ton of megapixels there. But this print at 17 by 22, even at arm's length, you're not gonna sit there and go, wow, that was 8 megapixels, or wow, look at the imperfections, because you really can't see any imperfections. Like I said, when you get super close, when I look really close to this image, I can be like, yeah, around the lips, it doesn't look as it would look if I was using a full frame camera. But when I hold it at arm's length, or I put it on the wall and I'm 2 feet away from it, or 3 feet or 4 feet, I'm like, damn, that's my favorite photo from this entire shoot. And that's what matters at the end of the day. Did you get the shot? Did the camera allow you to get the images that you wanted to capture? Did it do a good job capturing them? Did it give you a good file to work with? Are there good colors, tones, and clarity? And the answer to that is yes. I'm happy with the results that I got from this phone. I'm happy with the ultra wide, I'm happy with the standard, and I was surprisingly happy with this one particular image with that 3.3x zoom lens. Is it gonna be perfect in every situation with that one? The answer is no. But if you need to zoom in on something, it's gonna allow you to do that to capture it. The two main cameras are really the focus of this camera. Your 48 megapixels and your 50 megapixels, your ultra wide and your standard. And the results that I got from the RAW files to the JPEGs to the highest res to the standard res, I'm happy with. One thing I do want to point out before we finish is that from the standard to the ultra wide, I did notice a shift in white balance. That is something that you can correct for when you're processing the image, but it looked a little different. When it was wide, it was one white balance. When I zoomed in, it was another. But at the end of the day, am I happy with the results that I got with what I had in my hands? The answer to that is yes. Cameras in phones keep getting better and better, and this is an early integration of OnePlus and Hasselblad working together. I'm going to be interested to see where the next couple of iterations go, and I can't wait to test those out. Now, if you'd like to find out more information about this phone, there's a link down below. Please go check it out. Let me know what questions you have. Please leave those in the comment sections. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.